You're listening to TubbTalk, the podcast for IT business owners, with our featured conversation with Richard Tubb and Kevin Lancaster of ID Agent. My name's Jeff Nicholson, and this podcast is all about helping you grow your IT business. In this episode, Richard talks with Kevin Lancaster, a career entrepreneur who worked for the US Office of Personnel Management to restore and protect the identities of 4.2 million government employees. Kevin is passionate about offering enterprise-grade cybersecurity to small and mid-sized businesses. You'll hear how ID Agent got started in the MSP world, what the dark web is, how employees can compromise systems, and how MSPs can use ID Agent to protect existing customers and win new clients. This episode was recorded between Richard at home in Newcastle upon Tyne and Kevin at IT Agent's office in Maryland. And now, without further ado, here's Richard Tubb talking with Kevin Lancaster.
Hey folks, Richard Tubb here with another interview, and I'm really excited for today's episode. I'm joined by Kevin Lancaster, who is the CEO of ID Agent. Kevin, welcome to TubbTalk.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, now, ID Agent is a name I'm hearing a lot about lately. Literally every event I've been to, people have been talking about ID Agent. You've definitely got a buzz around you. Just before you and I came on air here, I was actually saying saw you speak in two different presentations, Continuum Navigate over in Boston, where it was literally a full house. Like there was people virtually hanging off the rafters to get into the room to see you speak about this. And again, at DatoCon in Barcelona a few weeks ago. So you've got this buzz going around you, but I guess for anybody who is unfamiliar with ID Agents, how would you explain who you are and what you do?
Thanks. It's as an entrepreneur, it's great to have a solution or a platform that generates this much buzz and is having this much impact. But essentially, we've built this ID Agent platform. Actually, the tool is called Dark Web ID to help our MSPs, our partners, really convey in a very simplistic way how bad it is out there. Bad, but by bad I mean how bad the cybersecurity challenge is. Our tool shows compromised email addresses and passwords that we're finding out on the dark web. We can at times disclose other PII, so mother's maiden names, credit information, last names, date of birth, that type of stuff. But ID Agent, we've had this quick emergence into this channel space after a couple of years supporting enterprise, so government agencies and the largest banks and financial firms in across the globe, quite candidly. And, in this space, it's really had a significant impact on helping MSPs convey that cybersecurity challenge. When you can show somebody their compromised email addresses and passwords and show how many there are within the organization, it really helps our partners get into prospects or go to their existing customers and really sell all the security solutions that they should be buying from them, these days. Because, there's a lot of noise out there and unfortunately, you get this concept of breach fatigue, and people don't really want to kind of pay attention to it until something bad happens, until they're compromised. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we've had such a strong buzz or wave of just excitement across the globe is that we're having that material impact showing these compromised credentials and helping our partners grow.
Yeah. Now, I work with a number of MSPs, and so when I talked about there's a buzz around ID Agents, I can usually tell there's an indicator that a tool or a vendor is going to do really, really well when the most progressive MSPs that I come across start talking excitedly about a product. That's what's happened with ID Agents. So the MSPs that I've spoken to have said that it's really given them a foot in the door to start having conversations with prospects. But in practical terms, what does the tool, do? How does it give MSPs that foot in the door?
Right. So, as I mentioned, up to this point, it's been hard for MSPs to, get into a new prospect, show their capabilities and differentiate from others that might already be in there or knocking on the door of that particular prospect. And so, we built two sides of our application, the dark web tool. The first one is that you can run any domain. You pick a domain across the globe, any organization, and we'll show whether we have hits on that domain. If that email address or that domain has been compromised and we have a hit, that MSP partner can go in and show that there are there are records out there, there are credentials out there. And that's, unfortunately, it's a overused term, but it does fit. It's kind of a shock and awe tactic because, again, most people don't think about compromise or they don't want to invest in security until something has happened. I mean, that's kind of par for the course. But so the MSP can use this tool, show that business owner their compromised email address, or show the fact that they've got 10, 15, 20, 30 of their employees that have been compromised. And so the feedback that we get from our partners is that it's having a tremendous impact in their ability to get into an organization and real quickly demonstrate the need, why they need to be working with this particular MSP, because they are progressive. They are working with solutions like we provide, and they're taking cybersecurity to the forefront of the conversation, as opposed to starting with, well, let me manage your hosted exchange, let me manage your email. Let's first start the conversation with security, and let's show you why. Because if the password that you use across everything you log into in the business and in your personal life is out there already, then you really need to be starting with security as the first conversation. And this just has become the visceral, high impact solution that MSPs need to get in there and convey that message up front.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the tool later on, but before we get any further than that, we've referred to it, the dark web. What is the dark web? How do you explain it to people, and not necessarily to MSPs, but there's going to be some MSPs listening who have heard that term, but perhaps don't really understand what it is. But how do you explain what the dark web is to end users? What is the dark web?
Got it. So let's break it down in a couple different levels, right? So every day, average person, MSP, everybody uses, either Chrome, or they'll use Firefox, Mozilla, to do a search. So they'll go out there and type an address of a business that they want to, check out, or a site that they want to go shopping on. And so at that point, they're putting in a URL, it's going out to an IP address and returning a result. And so that's, in a nutshell, the surface web, the web that everybody is used to using on a daily basis. There's there's the surface web, and then there's a sub-layer, if you will, to that surface web, and that has been considered the deep web. You don't necessarily put in a URL or a typical IP address. It doesn't end in a .com or a .net or a .org. Oftentimes, it'll end in a .onion. So it's a different protocol. So think about it. Think about the deep web as a layer beneath the surface web. So you've got the surface web that everybody uses. You've got the deep web, and because of how the deep web was architected, and because it's an area that's encrypted and it's easy to be anonymous in that deep web, smart, enterprising, unfortunately less than savory individuals figured out that they could carve out little areas, little pockets now known as the dark web, to do nefarious things. So they could, post pornography. They could, buy and sell, drugs. That they can, sell, you name it. I mean, guns, anything that you could think of, anything that's, any enterprising criminal mind wants to sell, they could go out into this area of the deep web and create an anonymous site and start transacting. And so that is in a nutshell kind of how we arrived at this concept, or coined the phrase dark web, because it's a sub-layer. It's not an area that it's easily accessible. Most people don't know about it. And then when you add in the encryption protocols, the ability to anonymize yourself, you can kind of see how quickly it becomes dark and mysterious, and a place where bad things happen. There's some good, and there's some very there's some good uses, valid uses of the deep web, but then this kind of area of the dark web is just where all of those bad things that you hear about, you read about, you see on TV, it's where those things occur. And that's where we look for data. That's where we look to see if we can extract credentials that might be up for sale. If we can monitor and pull in that data and then report to our partners that data is out there, then that's the mission that we're on, is trying to find that data in the dark web, bring it to the surface. That way our partners can show their customers and their prospects that, yes, this data is out there and this is why you need to take security, more serious.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense, and I can see how valuable that would be. Given its nature, and without giving away any of your trade secrets here, Kevin, how do you actually gather that dark web intelligence, though? Because the way you've described it to me, and if I was to sort of use an image there, this is like a dark alley or a dodgy bar, or it's a place where there's information, but perhaps from people that you wouldn't want to bump into. How do you go about gathering that dark web intelligence?
Yeah, it's a great question. The question we get quite often. So we've developed capabilities over the last 10 years. A lot of our background has come from supporting government agencies, here in the States. A lot of stuff that we did with governments as a whole, and then some of the states, where we're supporting them and providing intelligence. So, yeah. Because it is a moving target, it is a very, as you mentioned, kind of seedy and shady area. You got to be careful about how you go about trying to find data, what data you surface, what data you report on. So it's a combination of individuals, call it human intelligence, going out and trying to figure out where is it going to pop up next? What is the next forum? What is the next site? What's the next place that you can expect that this data is going to be bought or published for sale or trade or exploit? And then there's some technologies in the back end that once you identify certain areas and you start monitoring, you can extract and scrape that data. So it's a combination of both using the human intelligence, which really provides the high value data that we collect. And then using some of the automated tools that we can use to decrypt and extract different data that's out there. And so the hard part is that there's so much data out there. It's such a moving target. It's, again, these are enterprising individuals, organizations, and sometimes you'll come across data that might not actually be real, might be fictitious, might be, fake data. So there's a lot of care that goes into, looking at what data that we're pulling in and reporting. If we pulled in everything and reported on everything, we would actually overwhelm everybody because just the volume of data that it's out there. So there's a lot of care in trying to figure out, is this legitimate data? Looking at the profiles of the hackers and individuals that are posting this data. Are they in quotes, are they reputable within that underground marketplace, and have they been successful at selling legitimate data in the past or touting legitimate data in the past? So there's a lot of care that goes into making sure that we're reporting on data that's just not fictitious or false positive data and putting in the platform. So I don't know if that gives you a direct but indirect answer. So in short, it's a combination of human and artificial intelligence that we use to extract data out there on the dark web.
Got it. That makes sense. So I guess at the end of the day, you're doing the hard work. You're providing the data, perhaps about MSP's clients, perhaps about their prospective clients. Let's talk about clients first of all. Are you seeing MSPs using ID Agent to keep their existing clients safe? I guess at the end of the day, MSP clients don't know their data is compromised until it's too late, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the typical, something happens and then they call in a panic that they have to go out there and spend 10x to try to resolve what had happened. So the answer to the question is absolutely. I mean, when we started in this channel, our channel model, if you will, roughly 18 months ago, we had maybe 2 or 3 MSP partners. We're now up well over 1,000, partners, 1,100, and closing on 1,200, something like that. And they're using the platform and they're monetizing the platform a couple different ways. Some are going into their organizations or their customers and saying, we just have to turn on monitoring and it's X dollars a month, or pounds or euros a month. And so they're selling it as a monitoring service. Some are embedding that service within their security stack, their solution. So it's kind of another facet of their bundled pricing model. So we're seeing them go out 2 different ways. Some are selling it standalone, some are bundling it in. And again, one of the biggest benefits of this is again, it's that eye-opening data. And so typically what happens is the MSP goes out, sits down with the customer prospect, maybe they turn on the monitoring, but then they also start saying, well, this is why you need endpoint. This is why you need two-factor. This is why you need backup. This is why you need security awareness training, password management, and on and on and on. So one of the things that we found is that the data, the platform that we built is the catalyst to help the MSP sell all of the other solutions that their customers should be buying, right? And it's changing the conversation from security is an expense, rather, the new mentality now, and I think we're having a pretty significant impact on this mentality, is it's an ROI. It's not an expense anymore, right? I mean, you have to invest in these solutions up front because the cost, particularly in Europe with things like GDPR, the cost on the back end is exponentially greater than the cost up front investing in security from the get-go.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I know, I used to be an MSP myself, used to run MSP many, many years ago. I work with a lot of MSPs around the UK and Europe now. Selling managed services it can be a really difficult proposition because, as you've just said, there's all these different things. Oh, you need to do A, B, and C. What I'm seeing a lot of MSPs do now, and I think the reason the buzz around IT agent is so high, is that it's giving real sort of measurable, practical reasons for clients. Hey, look, your details are out there, that your details have been compromised, and it's only a matter of time, not if, but when. It's only a matter of time, that something bad is going to happen here. Then the MSPs can have the conversations about, making sure the backups are in place and all these other things. So I think, would you agree that's possibly some of the reason that, the buzz around ID agent is so high?
I think so. And I think it's now, MSPs are able to go in and say, look, this has to be a partnership, right? I mean, my job is to help, keep you up and keep you running and keep you secure, but you have to do, your job as well. And that's, I think, one of the other kind of aha moments in some of these conversations is that, the customer is making it harder for the MSP to protect them, right? So you can go in and say you've got 20 or 30 or 100 or 200 of your employees' credentials out there and have been compromised on LinkedIn and Dropbox, all the big ones that you hear about, or Discus, or a dating site. I mean, there could be very obviously legitimate uses for business credentials on something like Dropbox or LinkedIn, but the other sites out there, your Facebook, and there's really no reason for that to occur. You shouldn't be using work credentials or the like on a personal website, bank site, what have you. And so part of this is that it's giving the MSP the ability to say, look, this has to be a two-way street, because if I'm going to defend your perimeter and I'm going to guarantee uptime and backup and recovery and all that stuff, you got to do your job as well, because you're making it easier for somebody to go in and just take the credentials, open the keys to the front door, back door, the windows, and exploit you. And that's going to be harder for the MSP to ultimately detect at the end of the day, if the customer is not willing to invest in the tools that will detect those types of exploits. And so, yeah, I think again, it's the right market, right time. We just tried to build this solution where it was just very simplistic, but really high impact. And again, that's really what it comes down to, why there's such a buzz and why we're having such a tremendous amount of growth and success in this market, because we're really making that conversation that much easier for MSPs and when they're in front of prospects and customers.
Yeah, and I'll share with you, Kevin, I actually had a conversation with a UK-based MSP just last week who used ID agents, and they had a conversation with one of their clients and said, hey, you guys, you don't use Dropbox, right? No, we don't use Dropbox. And they said, well, we've actually got 4 accounts here using your business address. You do use Dropbox. Oh, and by the way, you've been compromised on it as well. So that's another innovative use to sort of uncover, I guess, this anybody can install a SaaS application and sort of get it up and running with an organization as well.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's some of the presentations that you've seen, or I do when I go around to speaking engagements, is that we are creating this culture of chaos, right? There's so many applications. I mean, think about how many apps are on your phone. In fact, your phone's probably on your corporate Wi-Fi or network. How many just business SaaS applications that pop up every day that organizations are trialing or using, or kids like Dropbox using without even the organization knowing that they're using Dropbox, and it's accelerating. And unfortunately, this the paradigm of the password, the email address and password way of authenticating and getting the systems, it's not going to change anytime soon. I mean, there's some great bleeding edge biometric type authentication tools and platforms that are coming out, but even at that, those have their challenges and risk, and it's human nature. The easiest thing for people to do and the path of least resistance and convenience for customers is a password. And so it's as we build all of these applications and tools for convenience, we're creating even more of a challenging environment for our MSPs and protecting their customers.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked about your explosive growth on your side of the Atlantic. You're now making a lot of headway in the UK and Europe. I guess we can't go very far in any podcast nowadays, Kevin, without mentioning GDPR. So in terms of your growth in Europe, how have you addressed the whole GDPR question? What does that look like for you as an organization?
Now, the new 4-letter word, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've taken GDPR very serious. We had some, it's interesting. Some of our most progressive and early adopters were out of the UK. And that was fantastic. We had to hit pause, if you will, maybe back last May, I guess, when GDPR really came out and we started to understand the implications and impact of GDPR. But, so we took a step back and really, trying to make sure we understood fully what GDPR meant, not just to us, but to our partners and their customers. And so we've seen now that our platform is a tool to help address some of the compliance requirements of GDPR, right? It's not specifically, defined, but, in GDPR, they look more favorably, the regulators look more favorably if you are taking a more proactive approach to risk mitigation. And part of that is understanding what your risk is out there on the dark web, what kind of credentials, what kind of data is out there. And so our platform is having, I think, a pretty material impact on risk mitigation. So if you're able to go in and show these credentials and say this, you need to step up your game and stop, this behavior and implement security awareness training, all these solutions. It's really having this kind of check the box impact on GDPR. And so we took a pause in May, June, July, August to really make sure we had everything fundamentally sound and we have all of our ducks in a row. And that's why we're having such a big push into the European market because the demand is there. We've had dozens and dozens and dozens of inquiries over the last several months that we really were like, wow, we're getting there. We'll get back to you soon. And that DataCon event that we were both at not too long ago was our first really kind of push into the European market. And the response has been fantastic. And it's, I think people realize that this is again same thing that we saw just early on in the States and down in Australia, is that this is the tool that's going to have that impact, and it's really going to help address some of the challenges with GDPR and getting your customers understand that they have to take GDPR serious if they have any element of PII on their networks. So it's been a great tool, been a great catalyst, I think, in helping with that GDPR conversation that MSPs are having with their customers.
Yeah, I think for all the hullabaloo around GDPR, I would say it's actually been a good thing for MSPs across the board. But yeah, hey, I've got a question, I guess. So obviously you've been predominantly in North America. You mentioned Australia as well. Now you're in Europe. What, Kevin, have you found is the big differences that stand out to you between North American and European MSPs? Great
question. I don't know if there's a substantial difference, at least in just our experience working with them. I think there is they approach solutions with a little bit more caution and diligence, which I think every organization should. I think that's actually been a good thing. We have very deep and substantive conversations with our European prospects and customers. They really want to understand what's behind the technology and how is it really going to help. And so I think that's been actually a great thing for us because, we've had a lot of early adopters, and in the North American market, and even again in Australia, it's great because they've been progressive and quick to adopt. I think we're going to see the same thing in Europe, but I think this is a newer solution. We have a different dynamic with just the conglomeration of European countries and just different philosophies across borders and stuff. And I think that's led to having very engaged dialogue with our prospects and partners. And so, I think maybe our sales process is lengthened a little bit, but quite candidly, I think it's a good thing because it gives us a chance to really educate our partners, and they come into this and using our tool, I think very, very with a mindset of like, how can I really use this to protect partners? How is it really going to benefit my organization? So I think once they understand the tool and the impact, we do get that same level of excitement. But I think that was one of the big things we noticed down in Barcelona, a couple of weeks back, is that let's really get a firm understanding of this solution before we kind of jump in. And it might be just a stylistic difference between some of our partners over here in the States versus Europe. But I appreciate it because it really gives us a chance to explain, our mission and why, we feel this is the right solution for everyone.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let me put my MSP hat on and ask one of the questions that I'm sure is on the tip of the tongue of people listening. I guess from a technical perspective, ID Agent, do you offer any integration between ID Agent and a lot of the popular MSP tools out there? We've got ConnectWise, Autotask, PSA tools. These are tools that MSPs live in most of the day. So what does it look like from an integration perspective?
Yeah, and so that, again, I mentioned some of our early adopters were some of the more progressive folks over in the UK. One of their questions early on was, how can I use this under my single pane of glass concept, right? So to your point, the partners live in either ConnectWise, Autotask, Kaseya, a couple other of the big tools out there. And so that became an important initiative for us, again, right around that May timeframe, right around GDPR. But so we started down a path of integrating with ConnectWise and Autotask, first, because that was the most noise that we got were with those two platforms. And so now we are fully integrated. So if we get a hit, we find an email address and password for one of our MSP's customers. It'll be fed right into their PSA. That way they can monitor it within that tool, and they can create the workflows to be able to do password resets and bring security awareness to that individual that's had that compromise. And so it has really helped to create that full automation from us finding it, going into their management tools and letting their customers know. And so that was a big request. I think on our sprint board down the hall, I think we've got about 15 or so additional integrations that are in various parts of various cycles within these sprints that we'll be announcing. So we're realizing that it's a large market and it's a very fragmented market. And it's interesting because there's Continuum camps, Kaseya camps, Autotask camps. And so we want to make sure that we help enable our partners, whatever camp they're in, we're going to build those integrations and make sure they have that automation and they can run that single pane of glass concept. So it's a big initiative for us in this fourth quarter and certainly into 2019 is just making it that much easier for partners to be able to ingest the data and then do something with it.
Cool. We will watch that progress with interest. Let's shift focus in just a minute from talking about managing clients and managing the dark web here to managing people. On a personal level, I know you've been recognized twice as on Smart CEO's Future 50 list. There's other accolades. I've done my due diligence on you, so I've seen all the cool things that people have been saying around you. You're now CEO of ID Agent. What skills would you say a good CEO needs?
Man, that's a big question. I think one of the things I've learned over the 15, 16, 17 years now of running organizations is that coming into it early on, I always thought I was the smartest person in the room. I realized pretty quick that you got to lose that mentality and change your perspective. And so I think I've kind of taken the stance of, hire smarter people, right? And realize that, smarter people in the room will bring the value to the business and help the business, grow. And I think that's just, for me, it's been, rule number one. And this is coming from somebody that, in school, I have a history degree. I don't have a technical degree. So kind of try to take that philosophy when we're looking at building solutions or just day to day in the company is maybe the benefit of having a history degree and being able to look back and trying to ponder what went right, what went wrong, but ultimately realizing that the way you build a successful business is by bringing people in that are smarter. We've got tremendous CMO that is on our team. We've got great Vice President of Business Development, Matt, who's just out there on the road tirelessly as an amazing advocate. We just brought on a former MSP as well, Dan Tomaszewski, just joined us over the summer, and he brings years and years of experience in the MSP space, and that's for us it's been invaluable to get his insight to really understand how can we better help MSPs and do their job and grow their business, and as a result, our business will grow alongside of it. So I subscribe to that philosophy. And early on, I always thought I was the smartest one in the room, but realized that you got to lose that pretty quick if you want to succeed in business and in life. And so that's my rule number one is, there are much smarter people out there, and if we can aggregate them and do good things, and ultimately it'll help our customers and partners, and everybody benefits. So.
I love that. I love that philosophy. Yeah, I subscribe to it myself. Surround yourself with people smarter than you, and you'll go very far. What's next for ID Agent then? What can we expect to see from you over the next few months? What's your goals for the company?
Yeah, so over the next several months, we're actually going to be announcing some really interesting additions to not just the dark web platform, but some platforms a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right of dark web ID, and it's. Again, because we are a security organization, right? But when you break it down, what our tool is fundamentally done is help partners grow. And so we've been balancing. Are we a security company? Yes, but we're a company that's having tremendous impact on our MSPs and their revenue and growth. And so some of the solutions that we'll be presenting here will be really designed to help further the MSP's ability to identify opportunities and grow. So there's going to be quite a bit of buzz on the front end of the platform in helping MSPs identify and grow their business. And then downstream, obviously there's going to be several more integrations that we announce and several more product enhancements. I mentioned we've been a tool, and I think there's beauty in this. We've been a tool that allows MSP to sell all the other tools. We haven't taken this approach, well, we're a platform, and now you have to buy our two-factor, and you have to buy our security awareness training. And some schools have thought to say, hey, you should add that stuff in and just be the platform. But we talked about earlier, right? There are enough platforms out there. There are enough continuums and Autotask and Datos and all that stuff. So we'll build in additional, I think, high value data and tools within the dark web platform that will further enable the MSP's ability to sell all the other stuff they've already invested in. So kind of a vague way to answer it, but yeah, we've got some, I think, really interesting, innovative solutions that we're going to be announcing here, and I think MSP community is just I think they're gonna love it. So I'm really excited about it. It's going to be, I think, 18 has been an amazing year. I mean, no question. But I think we're even more bullish on 19 and impact. And a lot of 19 for us is really spending a ton of time in Europe and in helping our European partners. So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see where you go. As I said at the top of our call, I've rarely seen so much buzz for a company as I've seen for you. I've made a nuisance of myself trying to get you on the podcast for many, many months now. So I appreciate you taking the time out to speak with me today. Wish you all the best for the future. But just before we go, if anybody wants to reach out to you personally, Kevin, or to find out more about ID Agent, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, obviously on our site, idagent.com, and we've got a number of ways to reach out and communicate with us. They can certainly send me a note. We're in the email business. So my email is klancaster@idagent.com. So LANCASTER or at idagent.com. So feel free to reach out. I try to get back to everybody as quick as possible, but and we've got all the social channels open and the website open. And so anything we can do to help our partners succeed, I mean, that's what we're all about. So, don't hesitate. Certainly reach out.
Fantastic. And we'll include all those details in the show notes on the blog as well. But Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time out of the day to share a little bit about the dark web and what ID Agent are doing. I wish you all the best in the future, but I suspect you're not going to need a lot of luck. You're onto something really huge here. So good, fantastic. Cool. Thanks for your time today. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to TubbTalk, the podcast for IT business owners. You can find the show notes and bonus content for this interview, along with dozens of other interviews with IT business leaders over at www.tubbblog.co.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast, then we'd really appreciate you rating and reviewing the show over at iTunes. Every review helps us reach new listeners and helps raise the bar for success in the IT industry. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak with you next episode. Have a great day.